In the morning, Robert McCall wakes up early to leave Homercap. Due to his obsessive-compulsive disorder, Robert has to be careful in everything he does, even getting ready for work and doing the dishes. His co-workers, who are unaware of his past, respect and admire him. On this particular day, he has lunch with Ralphie, a friend and co-worker who is now trying to lose weight. As Ralphie takes a bite from his sandwich, Robert hears a crunch and realizes there are chips in the sandwich. After asking Ralphie about his lunch, Robert usually had trouble sleeping, so he started coming to a nearby 24-hour restaurant to read novels while drinking tea. He is reading The Old Man and the Sea. Robert is questioned by a young girl if the man in the book has caught the fish. He replies, "Not yet." After eating all of her pie, the girl calls a cab. A few of Robert's younger co-workers inquire about his previous employment. He quips that he performed a quick dance for them as a pip when Gladys Knight was performing. The same girl is waiting for him when he returns to the diner that evening. She observes him reading a brand new book. Robert describes to her how the previous one ended. A limousine arrives across from the diner as they are conversing. She immediately receives a call from Slavi, her pimp. He informs her that the man in the limo is her customer. She informs her pimp that she finds this customer repulsive and doesn't want to work with him. But her pimp dismisses her feelings and orders her to report for duty. An overweight man is seen waiting for the girl when the automobile door opens. She reluctantly follows him outside and enters. Robert discovers the girl at the diner the following night, but she has a mark on her face. She receives a donut he brought from work. She chooses to deviate from their routine and sit with him at his table since she is anxious and searching for a quiet voice. Even though she goes by Teri, her real name is Alina. To seek Robert's feedback later, she hands him a CD of herself singing that she had recorded. She correctly infers that Robert recently lost his wife and is still depressed about it. Robert affirms that she was correct and reveals that his love of reading was sparked by a book challenge that his wife could not complete. As they exit the restaurant, the two of them walk and chat for some time. An approaching automobile interrupts their plans to separate ways for the evening. Slavi and his cabbie Tevi are there. Upon exiting, Slavi strikes Alina. Alina tells Robert to refrain from intervening. Tevi is holding a gun, which Robert observes. Robert is given a business card by Slavi as he approaches him, suggesting that he choose a different woman. Following that, Robert goes several days and nights without seeing Alina and is concerned for her. He discovers one evening from the diner manager that Alina was severely battered and is now in the ICU. When Robert arrives, he discovers Alina's face to be considerably more battered and disfigured. Additionally, he observes that she is with Mandy, a girl who is sobbing excessively. Robert stays outside the room and watches it without the girl's knowledge. Later, Mandy passes Robert while sobbing. She prepares a cup of coffee but fills it to the brim. Robert consoles her and inquires about Alina, letting her know that he is a friend. Mandy says that after Slavi hit Alina, she struck him back. Slavi became enraged and humiliated her. Mandy claims that Slavi has also allegedly thrown battery acid in the face of a female and keeps her close by as a warning not to disobey him. He treats his women exclusively as products. Before deciding to take action, Robert muses over the predicament for a few days. Robert uses the card Slavi handed him to enter the restaurant where Slavi and his men are gathered, with an envelope holding $9,800 in exchange for Alina's freedom. The thugs make fun of Robert as Slavi says that because Alina is so young, he gets so much money off of her that $9,800 would only be enough to purchase her 1 month of freedom. Then, after laughing at Robert's offer, he advises the latter that when Alina's value decreased, he would think about releasing her. Robert takes the money and begins to leave. When he was about to leave, he changed his mind and locked the door. He carefully surveys the men and any weapons they may be wielding, then sets the watch's timer and begins to move. A man points his gun at Robert, but Robert grabs his arm, causing the man to shoot Slavi in the throat. Then he pokes a shot glass into the eye of that man. He uses his dagger to stab the third man before getting a corkscrew and stabbing Tevi numerous times, till he is killed by sticking the corkscrew under his chin. Robert comes to Slavi's side and tells him what his body is going through and that he will pass away shortly. Teddy, a Russian mobster, arrives in Boston after the killings to find out what happened to Slavi and his guys. Together leads, he works with a bunch of dishonest police officers. Everything thus far pointed to a gang hit from a competing group. Robert notices Ralphie isn't in at work. A manager informs him that Ralphie has resigned. Robert pays a visit to Ralphie's mother's eatery. Ralphie is assisting her now because a fire started accidentally. To continue his search for the murderer, Teddy is taken by one of the corrupt police officers, Frank, to the gangster John Looney's office. Teddy and all Russians in general are belittled by John. Teddy responds by hitting John with an ashtray as Frank eliminates John's bodyguards. Teddy keeps striking John in the face until he passes out. Ramar and Peterson, the other two corrupt police officers, are dining at Ralphie's mother's place. They threaten her with an accident if she doesn't pay protection money on time again the following week. They are discovered by Robert, who approaches them and requests that a crime be reported, until he contacts one of them on his cell phone. They ignore him and advise him to dial 911. They confess to causing the restaurant fire in a video Robert recorded of them extorting a convenience store employee. Robert warns them that if they don't return the money, the news stations will air the video. While being held at gunpoint by the police, Robert soon beats both of them. They agree and later give Ralphie's mom the money back. Shortly after that, Ralphie appears wearing a security guard outfit after passing his test, and Robert is seen playing baseball with his co-workers. Robert returns to work and approaches Jenny, a cashier, to ask for a refund when he sees that she is assisting a man who is silently conducting a robbery at gunpoint. Robert approaches him casually and hands him the cash. The thief also wants Jenny's mother's ring, which she has surrendered. She gives it to him in tears. Robert takes note of the man's tattoos and clothing. Among other physical characteristics, he contemplates moving but decides against it because kids are entering the business and might get hurt. Instead, Robert decides to follow the man outdoors where he can see the license plates on his vehicle. They are told by the police that this was one of a series of robberies committed by the same perpetrator. Robert then goes to a rack and retrieves a sledgehammer. The following day, Jenny discovers her wedding band in the cash register, and Robert is seen cleaning the sledgehammer and returning it to the rack. Teddy learns that Alina is missing from Slavi's girls and inquires of Mandy, who responds that she didn't know Alina that well. Later, he visits Mandy and coerces her into admitting that she had lied. He forces her to recall the evening she saw Alina in the hospital, and she describes a mysterious but friendly black man who also stopped by and asked about Alina, but she never learned his identity. Teddy then kills her by strangling her after she lies to him. Teddy discovers video evidence of Robert entering the restaurant, but not ever leaving in light of this new information. He approaches Robert in his apartment under the guise of being an investigator, but Robert immediately recognizes him and responds to his inquiries with his prepared responses. Robert is far more than he lets on, Teddy concludes. Teddy finds out more details on Robert, but what they can learn about him reveals a spotless record with no indication that he was somehow connected to Slavi's death. Teddy has the impression that whatever they are aware of regarding Robert is untrue. He waits outside in a car with Frank and another guy while another man enters the diner where Robert is dining. The moment Robert recognizes the man, he asks whether there is anyone else they should be waiting for. The man approaches him while brandishing a gun. Teddy's view from his car is obstructed as a truck pulls up in front of the diner. Robert kills the man by striking him in the gut with his book, smashing his head on the table, and breaking his neck. He then uses a knife to cut off the lights by inserting them into an outlet. He leaves the diner and uses his cell phone to take pictures of Teddy and his men in their car. The criminals follow Robert home since they know where he lives. While the crooks discreetly enter his house, he boils some honey to treat a gunshot wound. They barge inside his apartment only to discover that Robert is watching them with covert cameras in another room. Teddy doesn't believe Robert, who has hidden proof in his flat that he is leaving town, and thinks that he is keeping an eye on him. Robert does leave town, but only to see Brian and Susan Plummer, two of his old buddies. They have previously collaborated for an intelligence agency. Robert queries Susan about Teddy and the individuals he works for. Brian and Robert discuss Robert's car bomb accident, which led everyone, including Brian and Susan, to believe Robert was dead. Brian says Susan somehow knew Robert wasn't dead. When she comes back, she informs Robert that the men he killed were members of the Vladimir Pushkin-led Russian mafia. Teddy, sometimes known as Nikolai, is the person Pushkin sends when something needs to be handled clearly. Ramar and Peterson, who worked for Pushkin, had their testicles shot off and stuffed into their mouths when they were discovered dead a few days earlier. Susan cautions Robert that these men won't let up until they have killed him and everyone else he cares about. After receiving Susan's approval, Robert departs the following morning to complete what he began. Frank Masters is captured by Robert in his car after Robert has fitted it with a hose from the tailpipe. He threatens to leave Frank in the car to die if he doesn't provide him with useful information regarding Pushkin's operations. Frank finally gives in and drives Robert to the Russians' warehouse, where they count and hide enormous pallets of money that are unmistakably filled with millions of dollars in cash. Robert coerces the thugs into handing over their weapons. He locks them in a room with all the cash so the police can find them. He then releases every employee and pays them a farewell bonus using Pushkin's funds. He ties Frank up with handcuffs and orders him to report what happened. Then he convinces Frank to act morally one last time by providing him with the knowledge he is certain Frank has hidden away in case he ever has to exert pressure on Pushkin. When the police show up, they discover the gangsters and the cash and take Frank into custody. A USB stick containing additional information detailing Pushkin's operations and revealing everyone currently on Pushkin's payroll, including law enforcement officers, sheriff's deputies, politicians, etc., is taken out of Frank's safety deposit box by Robert along with some cash, passports, and other items. Robert provides the details to the investigator in charge of the warehouse bust in an anonymous manner. Robert also discovers one of Pushkin's oil tankers and destroys it with explosives. Teddy asks a group of Russian assassins to assist him in finding and killing Robert. The team leader uses the restroom while they are enjoying dinner together. A short while later, Robert sits down in front of Teddy and hands him the team leader's bloody sunglasses, telling him he won't be coming back. Robert assures Teddy that he is exactly who he claims to be, and he gives him the chance to stop everything before he completes the mission and destroys the entire organization. Teddy politely informs Robert that he doesn't matter to him and declines the offer. Robert suggests that he's not frightened to keep going, and then he gets up and exits the table. Two of Teddy's men kidnap Ralphie, Jenny, and other Home Mart workers and threaten to kill them unless Frank meets Teddy at the location where he detonated the tanker. The bad guys follow his phone and wait for him to arrive. The henchmen in Home Mart get ready to kill one of Robert's co-workers when he fails to show up at the agreed-upon meeting location near the destroyed oil terminal. Over the intercom, music starts playing all of a sudden. Ralphie is taken by a gangster who then gets shot by Robert while trying to find the source. Speaking Russian, Robert calls the other hostage taker away from the prisoners before killing him as well. Teddy goes to Home Mart with his other hired help, as Robert travels covertly around the warehouse's darkness, placing traps with equipment he finds nearby. They search for him and are gradually killed one by one. He stabs one in the neck and hangs another with barbed wire. He engages the biggest of the bad guys, suffering injuries along the way, before killing him. When Ralphie comes back to aid Robert, he is wounded in the leg. The final bad guy is drawn to the break room by Robert. The break room is completely devastated when propane gas canisters in a microwave burst, when Ralphie follows instructions and turns on the electricity again. When the propane explosion activates the sprinklers, Teddy is the final one still searching for Robert. Teddy locates Ralphie and is about to shoot him, when Robert emerges from hiding with a stud ram set gun and shoots Teddy numerous times till he approaches, and shoots him in the throat, killing him. 3 days later, when Pushkin is taking a shower in his Moscow house, Robert appears in the bathroom. Robert continuously flicks on and off the lights and fills the sink with water. After a brief conversation with Pushkin, Robert leaves. Pushkin goes to the sink to get his weapon, suddenly realizing that Robert had severed the electrical lines and left them on the floor unprotected. He summons his guards. When the water hits the wire, Pushkin is standing in it and is electrocuted to death. Robert killed everyone inside the mansion when he left Pushkin's estate, because of the several bodies seen as he was leaving. As soon as everything is finished, Robert goes back to Boston to continue his peaceful life. Alina, who is getting better from her wounds, approaches him as he brings groceries home. She updates him on her new employment status and her reading habits. With his newfound purpose in mind, Robert returns to his quiet life. People who feel trapped with all the odds against them and no way out have inspired him to produce an advertisement. He gets a note at the diner asking for assistance one night. He simply responds, "Yes," and the movie ends. Thanks so much for watching. Let us know your thoughts on the film in the comments section below. If you enjoyed the video, please like it and also watch some of our other videos. And before you go, make sure to subscribe to the channel for more movie recaps.